This story is called First Goal. Penny Davies of the South Saskatchewan Minor Hockey League had a problem. It was December, a full 2 months into her first season with the Hungry Beavers, the Beavs, and Penny was the only girl on the team who hadn't scored yet. Well, goalies aside, of course. Penny played defense, and that didn't give her the best opportunities to put the puck in the net. But Penny felt, and her teammates regularly reinforced, that this was no excuse. It didn't help that every other defender on the team had managed to find the back of the net by now. Nor did it help that her best friend on the team and fellow rookie defender, Siobhan, Shiv, as she went by on the ice, had scored in her second game with the team and managed to tally up a total of 5 goals already. Penny, on the other hand, had over 40 shots on goal to this point, but was still sitting with the ugly 0 in the goals column of her stat card. Penny had been a solid point producer on her ringette team before joining the SSMHL and the Beavs. She had regularly found the net and landed a full 12 goals in her last ringette season before aging out of the league that operated in her hometown. And it wasn't that Penny had a bad shot either. She wasn't the hardest shooter, but she was accurate at hitting the net and decently skilled at putting the puck where she wanted within 3 bars of the goal. She just wasn't getting the puck past the goalie. Pat, Penny's brother, had assured her it was nothing to worry about. When I was in U16, he told her, driving home one day, I put up 32 goals. Penny had heard this fact many times and rolled her eyes. Uh-huh, she said, not feeling any better. Well, what I don't advertise is I went 14 games that season without a goal, in a row. Penny had to admit she hadn't heard that part of the story before. Yeah, right in the middle. I just couldn't find the back of the net to save my life. What'd you do to finally break the streak of bad luck? Penny asked. Pat assumed a sly look. Okay, this is going to sound pretty stupid, so don't go sharing this around. No promises, Penny replied. If it doesn't work, guaranteed, I am making sure the world knows. Cold, Pat observed, but fair. He took a deep breath, as if considering the ultimatum, then continued. When you tape your stick, you tape it the same way, right? Every time? Yeah, just like Dad taught me. Penny nodded. Why? Well, when I was in my drought, my coach told me to wrap my stick backwards. That's it? Penny asked, incredulously. Yep. The dumbest part of it? It worked. I wrapped my stick backward, and the same day I scored twice. Do you still do it? Penny asked, still disbelieving. No, Pat said. I did it for 3 or 4 games. Then once I felt the slump was over, I went back to the old way of doing it. I'll have to try that, Penny nodded. The next game, however, Penny forgot about the advice until well into the first period. She skated onto the bench after wringing a wrister from the point off the crossbar and remembered Pat's advice. In her mind, she kicked herself for the oversight. Coach Mom 1 came over while she was still sitting on the bench. It's just a case of the yips, she told Penny. Just keep tossing the puck at that net. It'll find its way home and then things will go back to normal. The what? Penny asked. Just call it a case of nerves, the coach said. Lots of athletes go through slumps. You're just having a tough start this season." "Thanks, coach," Penny replied, mimicking the short Rastafarian from the movie Cool Runnings. Coach patted her helmet hard on her head, completing the scene. Penny took the intermission to unwrap her existing tape job as quickly as she could, and then retape in the opposite direction. Instead of starting with the tip and ending at the foot of the blade, she wrapped foot to tip. It was awkward going, since she had never, not once, in her entire life done this task this way. But she managed to get it finished by the time the team had to go back on the ice. Granted, it looked like a kindergartner had done the tape job, and there were spots of exposed blade in some areas, and big, uneven blobs of folded tape in others. But at least it was done. And most important, as Penny stepped out onto the ice, she felt different. She was very conscious of the new tape job and how it made her stick feel on the ice. Her first shift of that second period, Penny felt less comfortable on the ice than she had in years. She suddenly felt like her body's natural motions, skating and handling the puck, were all wrong. Everywhere she stepped, it felt like the freshly resurfaced ice wanted to give way under her blades and make her fall. Her stick felt like some vestigial appendage that weighed and dragged at her as she struggled to keep her body upright. Her hockey brain, the zone she got into mentally when she was in the game, which let her keep up with the game and the players around her, was totally shut off, and Penny nearly ran into other players at least twice that shift. Back on the bench, she shook her head violently, trying to clear her mind of the discomfort she'd just felt on the ice. Her mind was running through all the mistakes she'd made. She started to feel dizzy and realized she was breathing in deep, heaving breaths. She became aware of Fleur shaking her shoulder. "Are you okay?" Fleur demanded for the third time. Penny finally looked over at her. She took a deep breath. "Okay." And then took another breath, as if the entire effort of saying the single word had exhausted all the oxygen she had in her body. "Bullshit," Fleur glared. "You look like you're about to faint." At Fleur's insistence, Penny sat down on the short bench behind the other players. Fleur sat down beside her. The two moms coaching the team saw this and started to come over, concerned looks on their faces, but Fleur shot them a look that kept them where they were. "Okay, Pens, just take it easy for a minute," Fleur directed. "Feels like I can't breathe," Penny gasped. "Stop trying so hard," Fleur commanded. "Small, short breaths." She demonstrated, looking like she was about to have a baby in the process. "Now you," she told Penny. Penny fought her body's desire to suck in as much oxygen as fast as possible and did her best to mimic Fleur's breathing. "Now count to 3 in between each breath," Fleur instructed once Penny had more or less got down the first part. Penny did as she was told, clearly struggling less with this step than the first step. "That's good," Fleur observed. After another few seconds, she asked again, "Are you okay now?" Penny locked eyes with her, and Fleur saw resolve there. "Yes," Penny replied. "I'm ready to go again." She didn't seem to be struggling to breathe anymore, and Fleur stood up and patted her on the helmet. "Good, 'cause it looks like your D-line is almost up." There was a whistle, and sure enough, The coaches signaled a line change. Penny got ready to hit the ice. Fleur tapped her again. Remember, your number one job out there is keeping pucks out of our net. She gave Penny a playful smack across the numbers, and Penny was off. Back on the ice, Penny still didn't feel comfortable. Her stick still felt like a giant caveman club she was dragging around with her. But her feet were doing what they were supposed to again, and she could tell her game sense was coming back. She came on shift to a face-off in her own zone that Bex lost. The other team started to pass the puck around their end of the ice, and Penny saw their center was looping around to get loose in front of the net. The rest of her squad had been pinned against the boards, trying to tie up members of the opposing team. Puck came loose from the corner and slid towards the opposing center, who was just getting to the front of the net, waiting for it. Penny was already on the way. She skated as much through as past the center, bumping her hip in the process and knocking her aside. Penny grabbed the puck and looked for someone to pass it to, but found nothing but a wide sheet of open ice between her and the opposing goalie. Go! She could hear the coaches shouting from the bench, and Penny did. She dug her skates in hard and pushed off, skating with the might of all the expectations she and her team had on her. She sped out of her own zone and into the neutral zone. In her peripheral vision, a defender had broken free and was trying to catch her. But the defender was skating up the boards, and Penny could already tell she wasn't going to have the speed to get to her before Penny reached the net. Penny focused ahead of her as she crossed center and approached the other blue line. She locked eyes with the other goalie, who was already in her ready position, aggressively forward of her net. She was smiling, and Penny wanted nothing more than to wipe that smirk off her face with the puck. Penny deked right, and the goalie shifted her body to the right. Penny deked left, cutting hard and spending some of her lead on the defender, still racing to catch up to her. The goalie came left, skating back a few feet to the edge of her crease, eyes still locked on Penny's. And that was Penny's advantage, she realized. Penny deked a final time as she came up to the left hash mark and cut back to the right. She lined up a point-blank slap shot, and the goalie's body slid across the net, matching her perfectly. The goalie froze as Penny stopped and slapped her stick against the ice, letting the slap shot go. The goalie followed where Penny's stick was aiming and got her glove up with lightning speed. And that was when the puck Penny had not carried into the third deke with her slid across the goal line and into the net. The referee whistled, the red goal light came on, and the goose honk of the goal horn sounded. Penny stood, disbelieving for a second, but then her teammates caught up with her, and she was swallowed in a surging huddle of bodies around her. You finally did it! What a goal! You didn't even have to shoot! Her teammates erupted in praise and hugged her and patted her helmet and back. Jen gave her a shove from behind, and Penny started skating, seeing her team leaning over the bench with their hands stretched out expectantly. The world caught up with Penny, and she let out a massive animal roar of relief and accomplishment. Yes! She skated past her bench, bumping fists with all of her excited teammates, and made sure to loop around to catch Brick's outstretched hand at her team's blue line. The coaches signaled for a line change, and Penny skated off the ice. As she passed Fleur coming off the ice, Fleur pumped her fist in the air and called out, "Knew you could do it!" Coach Mom 1 came over when she was back on the bench and leaned over, telling Penny, "There we go! The hard part's over. Way to show those yips who's the boss." Penny nodded and thanked her. She looked back and out into the stands. Pat was sitting in his usual seat in a row just above the height of the glass. He was smiling, and when she looked at him, he flashed her a loud thumbs up. "Proud of you, kiddo," Penny could almost hear him saying in her head. At the intermission, Penny ripped the tape off her stick as quickly as she could and retaped it the proper way. It had served its purpose, and now it was just screwing with her mind too much, having it taped wrong. As she went through the very familiar process of retaping it the right way, she finally felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over her. Her drought was over. She'd done it. Well, that was fun. It's the end of this Goon Girl story. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.